Welcome back to Arena. Arena is a place for questions, for big questions, and this time around we've been looking at big questions of sex, death and the meaning of life. And in this session we're going to return to that first question: what is the meaning of life? We've thought a bit in this series about what it is that makes life meaningful. We thought about what might give us hope in the face of death, but what is the meaning of life? Well, I suppose we could go for the GCSE biology textbook definition. What is the meaning of life? Well, things are living things if they display movement and respiration and sensitivity and growth. Is that what we mean when we talk about the meaning of life? Well, I mean, it's not less than that. It must at least include those things. But is it more than that? Well, in chapter 10 of John's Gospel, Jesus said this: "I have come that they may have life, that they may have it to the full." So what is a full life? Well, we get the answer from Jesus in chapter 17 of this book. We get the answer in a prayer. The night before Jesus dies, he prays this. He says, "Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, that your Son may glorify you. For you," that is God, "granted him," that is Jesus, "authority over all people, that he might give eternal life to those you have given him. Now this is eternal life, that they know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent." The kind of life that Jesus is interested in, the kind of life that Jesus offers, the life that is full of meaning, is this: a life knowing God and knowing Jesus. That is the meaning of life, to know God and to know Jesus. Right back in the first video of this series, I suggested that if you took a poll on the street, that a lot of people would say what makes life meaningful are things like relationships and things like a legacy, things living on after us, after we die. And here, Jesus confirms both of those instincts. Firstly, that we were made for relationships. But Jesus says the most important one that we're made for is our relationship with God. This is eternal life, that we know God and that we know Jesus. And secondly, that something should live on after us. Jesus says we are made for eternity, for eternal life. Just like Lazarus was raised from the dead after he died by Jesus, Jesus promises eternal life, resurrected life from the dead, for everyone who puts their trust in him. So here is the meaning of life. It is to know God personally in an intimate, healthy, loving relationship with him as your Father. But here's the problem. Last time we checked, God and humanity were not on particularly good terms. In chapter 18 and 19 of John's Gospel, humanity had just convicted the Son of God on false charges and crucified him. Relationships with God had always been bad, but this is a new low. So is there any hope left at all? Well, if you only know 3 things about Jesus' life, you probably know that he was born in a manger at Christmas, that he died on Good Friday, and that he rose again on Easter Sunday. Having those 3 things in the calendar makes them fairly easy to remember. And today we'll pick up the story at that first Easter Sunday. In chapters 18 and 19, Jesus had been crucified and buried, and at the beginning of chapter 20, someone goes to the tomb. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." Jesus had been buried a few days before, and now Mary wants to go and visit the tomb, only to find when she gets there that the stone in front of the door had been rolled away and the body is missing. And she assumes the most obvious explanation: grave robbers. As an aside, that's fairly significant. It's quite common to hear people say that the stories of Jesus' resurrection are obviously fabricated, but they caught on because people were just so gullible 2,000 years ago that they could easily believe that someone would rise from the dead. Now, that's fairly insulting to a whole generation of people who probably had more first-hand experience with death, probably saw more dead bodies than we do. But it also just doesn't hold up when you read the first-hand accounts. When you read how people responded to Jesus' resurrection, we find that they are just as surprised as we are. When Mary Magdalene finds that the tomb is empty, she doesn't think the body isn't here. I bet he's risen from the dead. She assumes the most obvious explanation. Someone has stolen the corpse. We meet equal skepticism amongst some of Jesus' other followers. Thomas, who earns himself the nickname Doubting Thomas from this episode, is equally skeptical. He finds it much more easy to believe that his 10 friends, whom he's known for 3 years at least, are totally delusional than that someone has actually risen from the dead. That's all to say, if you're watching this video and you're skeptical, if you think it is beyond far-fetched to think that anyone could have risen from the dead, then know that you are in good company. No one else believed it at the beginning either. Underneath this video, we'll put some links to resources that might help you think through how this is possible and whether these first-hand accounts are in fact reliable. But for the meantime, let's just think about what it would mean if it did happen. Jesus' rising from the dead means that the meaningful life is possible. It means that knowing God and knowing Jesus is possible. It means that eternal life is possible. How? Well, for starters, you can't know Jesus if he is still dead, but if Jesus has risen from the dead, then it is possible to know him. But it's deeper than just that. It means that the division between us and between God can be overcome. It means that forgiveness is possible and forgiveness is on offer. We all need forgiveness, and yet we live in a culture that's probably less inclined to forgive than ever before. You see this all the time. Some celebrity or some nobody gets a tweet dragged up, some comment they made years ago, and now they have to justify themselves in front of the mob. Social media has made public shaming easy, anonymous, and even fun. And the mob is always quicker to condemn than to forgive. The atmosphere can quickly become stifling. Have you ever said something that you regret? Have you ever held a view that you're now ashamed of? I suspect that most of us have. Can we be forgiven for our past? The English novelist and atheist Margarita Lasky put it powerfully in a radio interview. She said, "What I envy most about you Christians is your forgiveness. I have no one to forgive me." But Jesus' cross and his empty tomb means that there is a God who is willing to forgive us. Jesus' cross and empty tomb means that someone has taken that public shaming on your behalf and survived it as well. It means that someone has taken on death, the consequences that we deserve for our rejection of God, and come out alive the other side of it. If Jesus has risen from the dead, then it means that real eternal life is possible in an unobstructed, intimate, loving relationship with God. The relationship that we were made for, the life that we were made for, is possible and on offer. It also means that there is hope of a life and a meaning that goes beyond death. To quote another novelist, Leo Tolstoy once asked whether there was any meaning in life that death would not destroy. But if death itself could be destroyed, if someone could go through death on behalf of all humans and come out the other side alive, well, then the game has completely changed. Real eternal meaning is possible, and possible in the present. Jesus' new, eternal, resurrected life changes things for everyone. And it changes things for everyone who meets him. As we look through the rest of chapter 20, we'll see the way that it changes those that he meets. And it leaves us perhaps with one most important question. If this is true, if this forgiveness and eternal life is on offer by believing in Jesus, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you become a Christian?